This week on MS Refresh, Plus addressing in Outlook gets a delivery date, notable updates from the M365 Message Center, and Project Nucleus goes critical. All that and more, subscribe to stay in the know. This is the MS Refresh Show.
I swear I pressed it.
Hi there, and welcome to the MS365 Refresh Show. This is episode 34 for the week of August 16th. My name is Sean Bugler, coming to you from the West Coast.
And coming from the East Coast, my name is Matt Wade.
Matt, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
There's this running joke for those of you who watch the show with some sense of regularity, but that when I do the intro, that Matt is going to like subvert me in some way. And you saw it here. For those of you who saw it live. Oh, Matt, how's your world?
Not too bad. Things are okay. I'm actually excited about a couple of the items that are on the roadmap because they imply I might be getting some features in the government tenant sometime soon, which is great.
Ooh, knock on wood.
Yep. So
that's, for those of you, just as a reminder, if you've been watching the show again with any sense of regularity, you know that we recently stepped into a new format. So the first week of the month, we talk about all the things that ought to have come in the previous month. The second week, we talk about all the things that are yet to come. No, flip that. There we go. Week 1, what's due this month? Week 2, what was due last month? Week 3, which is this week, we're going to be talking about the Message Center, something that Microsoft 365 admins have access to, but for a lot of users, you don't have access to it. So we're trying to shed some light on what's happening backstage, so to speak. And of course, week 4, what's new and updated over the last month on the M365 roadmap. And, you know, in the rare month where there is a 5th week like this one, we will arm wrestle.
I'm literally taking that week off for vacation, so you do whatever the hell you want.
Anybody that would like to come arm wrestle me virtually. So to be announced. But yeah. So Matt, I've got news for you.
Ooh, what's that?
I passed my corporate accounting class and my fundamentals of finance 2 class with an A.
Both of which sound terrible.
Neither of them were very exciting at
Congrats.
all. But I passed both. Passed both of them. So I have like a week or 2 weeks to just kind of catch my breath. But you'll love this. I was talking to the chair of the department that of the program that I'm in, and he's newly incoming. He's been with the ASU for years though, and I'm telling him about the program I'm in, and he's like, "Oh, did you hear the news that we're divorcing the business school from the program?" And I was like, no, what does that mean? And he's like, oh, well, you know, we're going to be substituting in like STEM requirements for the, you know, the finance and accounting requirements. And I was like, so my face was like this.
And like, what does that mean for your you know, ultimate deliverable, right? Like,
because I've already started the program, I'm legacy and I can continue on the track with no impact. Yeah. But that technically means that if I had waited 2 months that I could have taken, you know, STEM classes as opposed to what I'm about to take, which is supply chain management.
I see. Yeah. All right. Which I don't know. It depends on neither of which are really applicable to the degree I think you're going for. I mean, STEM is more applicable, but I don't know. Oh, and look at that. We have a comment from Professor Anderson saying, thanks for the rave review of my class, is what he just said. He's like, right. You know, neither of which were really all that intriguing, as I believe is what you said, something along those lines. But yeah.
You know, if I hadn't passed both of those with A's, I probably would have been more upset. But my 4.0 is intact. I've already gotten through the worst of it, and blah, blah, blah character building.
Yeah, right. Exactly. All of that. Definitely. Yeah, so that's about all I've got. So how about we kick it off right into the news?
I think so. Let's do it.
This is the news.
Microsoft has issued a handful of updates via the Message Center in the month of August. Here's what's happening in the world of Outlook. Beginning on September 13th, it's been announced that the Outlook mobile apps for iOS and Android will be dropping support for calendar sync with the third-party services Facebook, Meetup, and Evernote. The team responsible has indicated that any users currently using the feature will be notified 2 weeks before the cutoff takes place. Plus addressing, also known as dynamic email addressing or sub-addressing, over here, camera.
Speaking of dynamic.
Right, so dynamic. Recently, the company, here we go. Sub-addressing, the ability to append a plus along with additional alphanumeric characters to an email address allows users to create dynamic disposable email addresses with zero effort. The feature's been available as an opt-in PowerShell only enabled capability since September of last year.
Boo, PowerShell.
Boo. Recently, the company announced that the feature would be enabled worldwide, sans PowerShell, and they've now formally announced that the change will take place in January of 2022. The reason for the delay, according to the Post, is to allow organizations time to retire any legacy mailboxes that might have previously used the plus sign organically in organizational email addresses. Moving on to other Microsoft 365 apps, starting with Whiteboard. As many of you know, if you watch the show with any sort of regularity, Microsoft Whiteboard is getting a massive overhaul later this year. In a Message Center post, Microsoft has confirmed that the new service will use OneDrive as the core storage platform, rather than Azure, used by the current version of the service. The change is scheduled to take place in October of this year and will be available to opt into starting in late August, rolling out through the end of September. However, for organizations using the Whiteboard app for Windows 10, the Surface Hub, or iOS, the company is emphasizing that they do not recommend opting in until further notice, as it could result in poor user experiences. So naturally, I'll be pushing that button immediately. In Microsoft Search, a recent Message Center update has affirmed that new people-centric search will begin rolling out to targeted release tenants in late August, with an expected completion of early September. With the release, clicking on user profiles in Microsoft Search will take users to a new people-centric view where they can add additional terms to further refine their search. Sticking with Microsoft Search for just a minute longer, the team has announced in a post that the All tab, the default tab, by default, will include results from third-party search connectors that organizations may have previously configured. This means that if your company has connected services like ServiceNow, Box, so on, to Microsoft Search, those results will appear right alongside everything else rather than in a dedicated tab that you would have had to click into. Jumping over to Microsoft Word for just a moment, the new modern comments experience, which has been available in the current preview channel since February, is scheduled to roll out both to Windows and Mac to the current channel this month. Again, if you're a regular viewer, you know that every now and again we stumble onto a leak elsewhere on the internet. We don't bring it up ourselves. Of course, we don't want to jeopardize Matt's MVP status.
It's all my fault.
So it comes as no surprise that Microsoft is finally announcing a major update to the Microsoft 365 roadmap, something that we revealed months ago. The Microsoft 365 roadmap site, if you don't know, is where Microsoft product groups publicly update what features are on the way, usually, and when we can generally expect to see them, sort of. And it's generally a hugely popular destination. It's a big part of what allows people like Matt and myself to stay on top of it all. The UI change is scheduled to arrive in early September, and it's going to include features like simplified filters, a more glanceable and mobile-friendly interface, collapsible cards, and a new preview date field that will allow teams to indicate if a feature is going to be available for preview in advance of its general release where relevant. And finally, jumping over to Microsoft Teams, there's a few notable updates hiding there as well. Background effects, including the ability to blur your background or set a virtual background, are finally scheduled to hit web-based versions of the service in September. Paging across multiple screens in the large gallery view of a Teams meeting is now scheduled to arrive in September rather than July, which is long since passed as previously planned. And lastly, spam call notifications. Calls that Microsoft identifies as likely spam will now be shown as, intuitively, spam likely in the call toast window, rolling out in late August.
That was the news. That was the news. That was the news.
I swear, I'm pressing the right buttons. It ain't going through though. StreamYard is not playing well with me today.
It is on strike.
Apparently so. Well, that doesn't take away from the content of the show, okay? That's all I have to say.
No, certainly not. The content has always been deep intellectual conversations.
Of course.
Speaking of which, can I just say how much I love the word toast in the tech universe?
You like toast?
I think it's hilarious. I think it's just such a charming word
to
describe.
Hate the word toast.
You hate the word. I knew you were going to do this to me. So you hate. Let me rephrase. You hate toast, or you hate the context of where toast is used in tech?
I hate tech toast.
You hate tech toast.
So I think it's a little bit of, I only found out what toast means, or like I've never heard of that word until like a couple of years ago, where a couple more experienced folks than me in my team had mentioned, yeah, well, when the toast came up, and I'm thinking to myself, like, what are you talking about? And yeah, I get the whole, like, it pops up out of a toaster concept, but like, it's just a notification. Like, it's not, I realize we like our, one syllable, I don't know, abbreviations or whatever. But yeah, I never liked that. It seems kind of, that, if people don't like skeuomorphism, they should really hate that word. So if you hate skeuomorphism, principally speaking, you have to hate the concept of toast notifications.
I think that the distaste for skeuomorphism was always overblown, because I think that having physical metaphors for digital experiences is really important for the learning curve.
I agree with that, actually, yes.
Well, so you're wrong.
Well, no, I can still hate the word toast. I'm just saying anybody out there that is a skeuomorphism, proponent, or that, opponent, they should also hate toast. But
all right, setting that aside, I wanted to talk about something interesting that that snuck its way into the news here. Are you familiar with plus addressing?
So I don't think I've heard of that before. I know that you can like toss a random, period in your Gmail address to try to like catch who is the person or who is the organization that leaked your data, kind of thing, or like sold your data. But I don't know what this plus addressing is.
So it's interesting that you latched onto the period part of it. And just in case anybody doesn't know, if you've got a Gmail address, you'll notice if you ever sign up for Gmail, like they'll let you put periods anywhere. But like, let's say for the sake of argument, like I, got sean.bugler@gmail.com. I actually also got seanbugler@gmail.com, ianbugler@gmail.com. Like I got all permutations of that with a period, because Gmail doesn't actually recognize periods. It just sees the alphanumeric characters and runs with it. But Gmail and now Microsoft have always supported this functionality called plus addressing, or dynamic emails. And really what that is coming back to the example of, like seanbugler@gmail.com. I've always been able to do Sean Bugler plus conference@gmail.com. And that's also my email address. I don't have to set up anything special or fancy. Like I just type my email address, my normal prefix, plus some combination of alphanumeric characters. And that's my email address. It goes to seanbugler@gmail.com. In September of last year, Microsoft rolled that out as an opt-in only feature via PowerShell for any organization up to GCC. I don't know about GCC High and DoD, but I do know that GCC supported it, because I was on the GCC cloud when we enabled it for the very first time. But the idea behind it is like, I can tell you this because my email is very public, sbugler@bayareametro.gov. But I can also like go to Microsoft and register for Ignite and do sbugler plus Ignite at bayareametro.gov. And that's also my email address, because as a global admin, I of course opted my organization into that functionality. It's super cool. And what's really great about that, one, of course, to throw to Matt's most sinister example right out of the gate, organizations absolutely, especially in the public sector, especially in like the corporate universe, sell your email address. Mm-hmm. So you can create an email address that's like sbugler plus, I'm just going to throw one out there, Avanade. Disclaimer, I don't think that Avanade actually sells your email address, but they have bought them from other people. And if you see email coming into that address that isn't the organization you gave it to, you can reasonably surmise that that address has been sold. You can essentially create unique email addresses with no pre-configuration whatsoever. And that's also useful if you want to create filtering. Like if you want to create Outlook rules
that's what I was going to ask. Like how can I benefit from this? Because I am just livid by, like, I attend a lot of conferences. I speak at most of them. And like, you'd think that as a speaker, they're not going to give my information out. They do.
The very first addresses they give away.
It kills me that it's like, I can't not, So yeah, how can I just send these to like a dumping ground that automatically gets deleted after, a couple of days?
Yeah, so you can create an Outlook rule that is, if you go in and you create an Outlook rule right now, you can see that one of the conditions, one of the triggers is email sent to. And of course, most people use that to filter out emails that aren't sent directly to them. Like if you're in the CC line, then you can reasonably surmise it's not that important. Yep. But you can also do that for email sent to S. Bugler plus, ShareGate.
No, not our friends at ShareGate. They would never.
They would definitely never. But again, to that end, maybe this is how we find like data leaks or whatever.
Yeah, right.
It's so useful. So you can create email addresses that are, if it's to this, S. Bugler plus whatever, filter to trash, filter to spam, filter to I'll get to this eventually.
What do you do? Like if a conference wants you to log in though, like with a user account.
It's still your email address. I mean, you could sign up with that dynamic email address.
Okay, gotcha. Mm-hmm. You just have to remember or keep it in a password manager. Okay. All right, that's
which actually brings us to our first sponsor of the week, which is 1Password.
No, I'm a LastPass guy.
Anyway. 1Password forever.
Ooh, all right, I'm moving away from it and back towards the built-in Apple ecosystem. But
deep cosine 4+ addressing. It's super powerful. And for those of you who aren't aware of it, it's something that your global admin can enable with a single PowerShell command. And for those of you who have, begrudging global admins that won't do it, no matter how, how badly you beg and plead and please turn it on, I need it. You can just wait until January of 2022 when Microsoft pushes everybody off the cliff.
Awesome.
Sans PowerShell.
Yes. Boo, PowerShell, boo.
Boo, PowerShell.
Yeah.
That's what I've got.
Sound effect for that. All right.
What caught your attention, Matt?
So what popped into my head was what stood out to me, I guess, is the fact that Project Nucleus, if you remember what that is.
Nucleus.
Do you remember Project Nucleus, Sean? What is Project Nucleus?
Project Nucleus, if I remember correctly, was the unnecessary branding that Microsoft gave to the capability for Microsoft lists to work offline.
Yeah, do you think
or to cache?
Do you think files on demand for OneDrive had Project Galactic or something like that?
Files on Demand was the brand name because then they immediately started abbreviating it as FOD. They were like, "Do you have FOD enabled?" What?
Yeah. No, I hope not. No, it's great. You really like it.
That's between me and my doctor. Thank you.
Right, exactly. So anyway, Project Nucleus has identified it is going to come out. I think it's next month or the month after. But it's actually got some documentation now, which is sort of a big deal. So Project Nucleus is the syncing of Microsoft lists, and Microsoft lists are really just a rebrand of SharePoint lists. All SharePoint lists all Microsoft lists are SharePoint lists, just separated out and looked at from a different point of view and sort of centralized in its own little web app.
Is this an SAT question?
No, right.
Not all SharePoint lists are Microsoft lists, but some Microsoft.
It's we needed a way to compete with Airtable and Monday.com and all those other places. So we needed people to realize that SharePoint lists have been around for a long time and can do a lot of what those other tools can do. So they needed to brand them out. But
lists TM.
Yes, exactly. And now I feel like I have to capitalize the word list, like team and group. It kills me. The language is just being butchered by this company, I swear. Anyway, so list is going to be available offline. In fact, I actually noticed it on my work account recently that it was asking me if I wanted to open up in the desktop app, the desktop lists app. And this is a upper level GCC account. So I'm not sure. I assume that's got to be a precursor that you have an app, to deal with it. Because you have to open up something, right, to view a list offline and to have it synced to your synced. I guess we'll go with that.
Synced
to your device. So there's some interesting limitations though. So it's not going to support everything. In fact, there's probably a lot of things it's not going to support. So I thought I'd kind of talk about that a little bit. Let's make sure I pull up the right item here. Yeah. So this article is going to be available in the show notes. This is the first time that I have seen any documentation on this. What are you laughing at? What is so funny?
I'm laughing at the fact that this is like the running joke of like the Barack Obama list of like, you know, I've got three short points to make. 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D,
Yes,
1D.
right. Yes. Fair enough. I thought I did something bad there. Nope, I'm just the messenger here.
No, you're a victim just like us.
Correct. Yes. So this page is basically the support page, Microsoft support page, user guide, if you will, for editing lists offline. And the section I thought was notable here was the current limitations of list sync. So first is that it's only available for Windows 10 devices. Not super surprising, but also like not amazing. You know, OneDrive is available for pretty much every major platform out there. So the fact that we're using OneDrive technology to sync these lists, you would think that it would be across other devices, but hopefully that'll come soon. But the big thing that kind of stood out to me was these specific types and just feature sets that are not going to be supported. So for me, I thought a notable one, which kind of makes sense when you think about it, is lookup fields. So if you're looking up data from another list, like I get that because you'd have to download that list or sync that list as well. But like at the same time, just grab that piece of data and just whatever the last time it synced, like pull that. Like that should be,
right, just put an asterisk next to that column name.
Yeah, it might, you have to wait for it. So that one isn't a huge deal, but the thing that did really stand out to me was calculated fields. That one kind of blows my mind. And I realize that a lot of times that does have to do with lookup, but like if you're using the me or the today format or convention that they have, the open bracket me close bracket or the open bracket today close bracket, and you want to do quick like date calculations, that's not going to be supported, which I think is crazy to me. And then validation. So anytime that you have to validate something to make sure that it meets the expectation for that field, that will not be supported either. So that means any list that has this information, at least from what I'm reading, cannot be sunk to your device. So it has to be on the cloud always moving from that point forward. The other one was this last one. Lists
yeah, that one's what's jumping out to me. I'm like, that default value, just cache it.
Exactly. So, if you have a choice column and you include a default choice option because you need to make sure every item has a value and nothing is like, empty, if you set that default value, you can't sync that list. So one column in a list that has, let's say, 50 columns and 10,000 items, if one of those columns has a default value, you're not going to be able to sync it. I don't know. It seems kind of crazy to me.
Yeah, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking immediately like friction. Is the average end user going to understand this nuance?
God, no. And they're going to see this and go, "This is amazing! I can't wait to do this." Like if they're a big user list, they're going to be all about trying to sync, and then they're going to find out, you're going to have to either rebuild your lists to support syncing as it currently is.
Yeah, that's what they're going to do.
Or just tolerate. Well, it depends. I mean, if it's not a huge list, but it's still useful, and you want to have it offline, like this could be valuable enough to go through it. But there's a lot of column types that you can't, like once you pick, a text field or a text column, like you can't choose. I don't think you can change that to like, I don't know, a people column or something. No. Like there's only a select number of columns that you can change a certain column from to, and you're going to have to like recreate, which is going to be, and then you lose version history of that. I don't know. It can be kind of a mess. So
I can already see my CTO's head exploding as I go, "Oh, this is an easy fix. We just completely remake it."
I know. So anyway, this article here will be in the show notes afterwards, so you can take a look at this because it is a very well documented list of features, how it works, how to stop syncing, how to start syncing, what does sync, what doesn't, and then the limitations. But the limitations are kind of worth discussing here because some of these are a bit disappointing. I'm sure over time, the feature set will expand beyond and will support a number of these. Although I have a feeling lookup fields are probably going to be throwing them a loop for a long time because not having a dynamic way to find out what something is going to be an issue. But that one I can understand. There's a few other ones in here, take a look. Lists that allow management of content type set to yes, like sure that happens. It's not a huge thing. Mostly developers are like, hardcore Power users would probably use that, but there's a few others in here to take a look at.
That's how I get rid of the title field.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. That's a good point. Hiding the title field, that's the only way you can do it. And people do like to do that. So anyway, that's what I thought I'd kind of pull out, because this is like on its way and it's coming soon. And we now have some official documentation, and we also have some swim lanes that we're going to have to stay in to actually make use of it. So if your lists don't sync, take a look at this article, because that might be why.
There's a quick point of clarity on that one, because I know you mentioned a lists app, and I think from what little I've seen so far, there's going to be a web app that's going to be offline capable, but not necessarily like an app for Windows or Mac. That very well may end up being their solution. But I think what they're doing with like WebView 2 on the team side of things is also where they're looking for lists. Yeah,
I don't know where that came. I mean, I'm not in any sort of special, and I don't even have like, targeted release or anything set up on that account. So when it hit me with a call to action on the list homepage, it was surprising to me, because it opened up an app. It was just a wrapper, like literally nothing more than that. But I could pin it to my taskbar, so I can open it up whenever I want to. And I'm kind of assuming that that's going to be the prereq, that it needs to be there first before you can start syncing things. But I have no idea. I haven't seen any documentation on that app yet at this point.
Yeah, I think you're right. And it's, just as you're able to like click on that little plus if you're using Edge to create like the little wrapper of Outlook or Office.com, it'll probably be similar to that.
Yeah. So yeah, that's all I got. I figure we can probably jump into questions a little bit, do a little Q&A before we close out for today.
Let's see, we're a little quiet on the questions here. For those of you who are joining us live, feel free to jump in, but I'll go ahead and start with my favorite here, which is, where is the book of Project Nucleus? Right? That's which I assume is the premise of the fifth Matrix movie.
Are you consulting on that?
I'm pretty sure that's the plot device for it.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
What a great branding opportunity. I think they are doing another Matrix movie. Like, this is a great opportunity for Microsoft. Come on.
Right. Well, there should be, honestly, there really should be like a lookbook for lists anyway. So like, I think that I don't know why they haven't done that yet. That kind of annoys me, actually.
And then, of course, throwing back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier with plus addressing, Jamie calls out, I imagine they're using that plus as kind of a stop and look. They're ignoring everything after that so that they can determine what the email address is that we should actually be sending this email to. And that's exactly what they're doing. They're seeing S Bugler plus, and they're saying stop, skip everything that comes after that until you get to the @ and then that's the email address we're sending it to, but we're still codifying the actual intended address it was sent to. So S Bugler plus Facebook at BayAreaMetro.gov, like that. That's still going to be the to field, so that you can do it for the purpose of, as Jamie's mentioning here, rules and filtering.
And do you think that the marketers out there, or like you think like HubSpot or MailChimp are going to like suggest to their marketers that like, oh, by the way, well, I mean, it's not like it's new technology at all. I guess it's a big deal that it's going to be in O365 by default, but it's been in, you said Gmail for a long time, and Gmail is probably, the primary consumer email address. Like, I'm kind of surprised that these marketing apps haven't like pushed an automatic way to pull anything, anything after a plus, just remove it.
Yeah, and I think that to that end, Jamie's exactly thinking about it the same way.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Meant out
the nefarious side of things.
But the reality is the smart ones have already figured it out. And if you try to do it in some form fields already, if you put a plus sign in there, they will deem it an invalid email address. They'll say that it's not a real email address. And it's not like I can say, like, well, let me talk to your manager about that. But that's actually, I think the natural next step of this, honestly, is going to be what Apple is doing. I don't know if you've seen, but with the upcoming iOS 15 update, they've got this really great thing called iCloud Plus, wherein you pay for storage or what have you, and you can actually use this feature called Hide My Email Address. And this is similar to iCloud Relay, where they would obfuscate your email address, but instead of doing some weird convoluted email address, they'll give you a randomly generated at iCloud.com email address that auto forwards to your mailing address. So as opposed to using these kind of, to some degree, I mean, it's really clever, but still convoluted. Like, I have to put a plus sign and tack everything on there. as opposed to that, which has some discernible pattern. It's going to be like cuckoo-cachoo23 at iCloud.com.
Right.
And that's my email address for that service. And it's just going to auto forward to it. And I can then burn that email address when I want to.
Gotcha. Yeah. I've used the Apple login process a couple times on things. And it is weird because I think it's the New York Times that I used it the first time. And when I log in on there, it's, the email address that they use is just, I mean, it makes sense what you see, but it is random. And it's just kind of like, man, is that going to get to me? Like, is any update I actually need from this service going to get to me? I don't think it's very clear from the consumer perspective as to how that really works, I guess.
I think that particularly as we get further and further down the line of like privacy consciousness, and I do feel like we're only just starting to climb up this hill, both in the consumer and, enterprise is obviously always slow to catch on to this, but I guarantee you what we're seeing on the consumer side of things, we're also going to see eventually crawl into enterprise as well. We're going to start to see people just kind of adapt to it. It's no different than like the burner credit cards, privacy.com.
Right.
Like those are already getting popular because people are like, I don't want to give you this permanent or semi-permanent information that's so painful for me to have to like undo and unwind and take back.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Okay, so I do have one here. So Jamie popped up and said, what's the point? Why use the syncing on your Windows 10 device? And I would think anytime somebody is obviously not going to be connected to Wi-Fi, but I'm thinking like an airplane for, when you're traveling. I would like, I feel like you're more likely to have Wi-Fi or like a network connection on your cellular device than you are on a laptop. Just because cellular is all around and Wi-Fi is not always. I think it is going to be a limited use case. But just having quick access in like a separate app concept, I think in Windows 10 is going to make a difference too, where people just go, oh, I'm just going to go to lists. Because right now, even when I do, adoption and training and stuff, people still a lot just don't see the value of like the Office for the web apps. Like, why would I ever open that? And like, tell me what is the use case for that at all? And it's like, well, I realize, the Word doesn't have like mail merge and macro, like, some of the more, high end features, but you don't use those on a regular basis. If you're just doing text editing, like it's faster, it loads faster. You got more simultaneous editing. It's still delayed a little bit in the desktop apps, that kind of stuff. But people that love their desktop apps, that's going to be the place that they go for their lists, I think, regardless of offline support.
Yeah, and honestly, this popped into my head when we were talking about this before the show, that I think this might actually be a precursor to, 5G enabled laptops. I think that's something. I know we talk about this every time there's a new like G, like 3G. There were rumors about a 3G MacBook, right. But 5G genuinely. I mean, you already see, at least here in the U.S. and I'm sure abroad as well. AT&T. T-Mobile, like they're all doing like home internet built on this new cellular activity. So I would be interested to see, it seems like they're positioning themselves for this to be something they're ready for, like as connectivity drops, and it's not just going to be like I'm on a train and I'm going into a tunnel. It's also going to potentially be I'm in the field and I've got my laptop and it's connected to a 5G tower, but it's not always going to be super reliable.
Yep. And that's not to say that, the mobile devices shouldn't have this, because they absolutely should, especially since they're the ones that can keep that connection right now full time for the most part.
Yeah, and it looks like here Andrew jumped in here. Depends on the use cases. People that work in different environments, mobile workers, or people who don't use a conventional device like a MiFi, the little hockey puck.
Yep.
There's absolutely use cases, and I mean, if you ask me why did they start with Windows rather than like the mobile devices, I'm willing to bet the mobile devices are like right behind.
Yeah, I'm sure it's the easiest.
Yeah, and it's probably going to be pretty self-explanatory. You really didn't have to explain to people with a mobile device that sometimes a file is accessible and sometimes it's not. For the most part, it intelligently downloads and blah, blah, blah. But particularly on like PCs, there's definitely a little bit more of a learning curve when it comes to like offline sync. And I think we see it with FOD, files on demand. Like there is still a little bit of a curve when it comes to onboarding and familiarizing users with what is accessible and what is not.
Oh yeah, especially with those little icons. I mean, I had to go back and look up what's the difference between the open green circle with the check mark and the full green circle with the check mark. And like, if it's not easy for me to remember, like, come on, I don't know. That's a tough one.
I love hearing from our service desk. People are like, so one more time. So the check mark doesn't mean I have it. The greener check mark.
Yes. The greener. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I'm like, yes, you've got it.
Yeah, good enough. Here's the link. Here's the support article. Read that. That's really very easy to understand, I swear. But yeah. So I thought that was a good one to kind of pull out there. So yeah, I think that's all I've got. Sean, anything else you want before closing out today?
I'm just happy to be here.
I think that this was a notable comment as well. A reasonably steady week, which I think Teams is the one that's been going crazy as of late. Most of the roadmap items have been about Teams, which is good because Teams needs a lot of plussing.
A lot of love.
Yes, good amount of massaging and polishing, but the updates should have been good, and I guess we'll see what the rest of what the fall brings for that, especially with all the kids going back to school right now. I'm not sure if Teams is really aligned yet with the whole concept of, everybody's out for summer and then everybody comes back for school in the fall, especially given how many students are still doing remote schooling. So it'll be interesting to see what pops up before school starts, or I know it has started in a number of places, but like I know in the Northeast, we don't start until, early September. But.
Yeah, I'll be interested. I mean, obviously, like if Teams ends up being like the killer app for education, I'd be really interested to see like how the development cycles rearrange around that, and we start seeing like more releases in the summer rather than like the fall mid-cycle for schools.
Yep, no, totally can agree with that. All right, well, I think that's good for today. As always, a like and subscribe is much appreciated. Thanks so much for watching. Leave a comment below, start that discussion, or continue the one from the live chat. And Sean, thanks for joining me this week. And I can't wait to hang out with you next week with everybody else who's watching again. And we'll be covering what was... Now I have to pull it up.
I got it.
There we go. What was new and updated the past month? That's what I thought it was, but I wanted to be absolutely sure. But yeah, thanks so much. And we'll see you guys next week.
Baba booey, baba booey.